I saw what was needed on this island. The island needed some transportation. At the time, I don't think there was even a taxi. And there was no bus. And if you were elderly and couldn't drive, then you either had to leave the island or find someone to drive you around, which was difficult. And I thought, well, if we had something that, a sort of place where people could get a lift. And so I started investigating.
That's Barry Mathias, and this is The Stories That Brought You Here, a podcast dedicated to learning about some of the people living in and around the Salish Sea. I'm your host, Chris Wakaluk. Well, if you've ever used one of the car stops on Pender Island, Barry Mathias is one of the people you can thank for that. One of the very unique features of Pender Island is a car stop system that we have, which is essentially designated spaces for people to hitchhike legally. In this interview, Barry is going to speak about how this all came about and the logistics involved in getting the car stops installed on various places on Pender Island. As well, he's going to talk about he and his wife Clare moving from England when they were in their later 40s and making a fresh go of life in Canada. He'll speak of some of the ups and downs that took place during their time living in Victoria until they moved to Pender Island, where Barry would open up the first bookstore on Pender Island, which still exists today at the Driftwood Centre, Talisman Books. Barry was also very active in our local theatre society, and he's going to share stories about some of the most memorable plays that he was involved in. That's coming up in a few minutes, but before we get started, have you ever considered documenting your own or family member's life story? Well, since 2019, I've been working with people privately to document the important stories of their lives to preserve for current and future family members to enjoy. These recordings are all in your own voice, and it is the story of your life fully told. But the creation of an audio memoir is beyond simply preserving words. This is a chance to be truly witnessed as I assist you in telling your life story. A very unique opportunity awaits to honor your journey, celebrate your life, and create something deeply important for yourself and loved ones. How it works is we start with the pre-interviews. Those are a few casual conversations so I can learn more about you and your stories. Next come the recordings that take place in the comfort of your own home. I'll spend the time guiding you through the process of sharing the key moments of your life journey. All that is required is a quiet room and your stories. Using creative audio editing techniques, my voice is removed from the final recording, and I bring out the best of you by crafting your storytelling into a polished audio memoir. Recording an audio memoir can be a really powerful and important experience, and I just want to share my latest testimonial with you. Quote, "Thank you from the bottom of my heart all the way to the top. This process of creating an audio memoir with you has been ever so meaningful, especially at this ending time of my life." End quote. While these recordings are incredibly important to preserve your life story for your family members to have, I think an even more important aspect of this whole process, it's an opportunity for a person to deeply reflect on their life and have myself, an attentive listener, be present with compassionate curiosity and bear witness to someone telling their life story. If you'd like to know more about this, you can go to my website, myaudiomemoir.com, and you'll find all the information there. You can reach out to me via the website as well, too, if you have any questions for me about this. And I would love to tell you more and possibly help you turn your stories into a legacy. myaudiomemoir.com. Thank you. Now here's my interview with Barry Mathias. How did you come to Canada?
Well, I have two daughters, and I'd said to both daughters that when you have finished at 18, I do not want you going straight into a job or into university. I want you having a year out. I will pay for it. So my elder daughter came over to Canada, and she was working as a nanny in Toronto. She worked for a lovely family, and we thought, we'll go and visit you. So we went over with my other daughter, and picked up both girls together, as you might say, and travelled across Canada and ended up, because some friends of ours have said, you've got to go to Victoria in BC. And that's what we did. It was pretty horrible in the sense that we decided just to fly to Alberta. And from Alberta, we got the train to Victoria. Well, what we didn't know was that the train at that time was on its way out. It started off with our leaving the station 5 hours late. We didn't see anything of the mountains. We were in total darkness, and the train seemed to be stopping all the time. We ran out of food, coffee, and eventually the toilets blocked. And I still have this haunting memory of these places that we passed through. Port Coquitlam! And, we were having the most terrible night. Anyway, I got to Victoria and thought it was lovely. And so then we would go back, and we thought, well, I ought to say this. We went to Victoria and we looked from the Empress, we looked at the water, and it was clean. There was nothing, no rubbish there. We come from little England, which is always full of rubbish. And so we got back and we thought, I think we'd like to go there. So we applied, and eventually, not to begin with, got turned down to begin with. Apparently, we needed $250,000 to invest other than the house. We thought, well, that doesn't make sense. And we were quite prepared to give an undertaking that we would be self-employed and that we would not put up on Canada at all. The universities said no, they weren't interested in me unless I had a PhD. I had 2 degrees, but I didn't have a PhD. So that ruled that out. So I thought, well, that's okay. I'm a lifetime teacher. I'll get teaching. And so we arrived just with the one daughter. The other one now had gone to university in Scotland. And the elder one was with us. And we rented half a place just near the outer part of the harbour in Victoria. And we had the top part of the house, and another couple who never spoke to us. They were of some nationality we didn't ever know. But other than good morning and good evening, that's all that we ever said. And our daughter had picked up a friend on the way who had nowhere to live. So there we were, all of us squashed into this tiny place. Oh, we had a dog as well. And we could not get work. What happened was I went to the College of Teachers and said, right, I'd like to teach. And they said, well, we want your certificates for when you were 16. And I said, this is silly, I've got 2 degrees. No, we're not interested in that. Took me 6 weeks to get these certificates from Britain. During that time, we were basically doing whatever we could. My wife managed to get a job working for the new Bastion Theatre Company. And they employed her because her accent was good. And what they liked was someone on the telephone who could explain why the old Bastion Theatre had gone out of business and the people who had memberships were going to lose their money. And that took a lot of clever speech, as you might say.
No doubt.
I found it more difficult. I went round and I thought, well, I'm not going to work in a fast food store because I'm still waiting for these certificates. And so I tried various clothes shops. I thought, well, I think I could sell clothes. No, they didn't want me. I'm too old. Well, I was, 48 then. So I thought, oh, well, there we go. And so I ended up selling advertising on the radio.
Oh, really?
Yep. I was very good at it. Very good. I was always getting bonuses, but I hated it.
Well, what do you mean you were selling advertising on the radio?
Well, basically, you use this radio station, and then you would ring people. And I never asked where they got all the names from, but they got all these names. And nearly always they were older women who answered, and they liked my accent. And they would pay money for this book of tickets, which was supposed to be very, very good value for them. They could go in and they could get free carnations in this store, and they could get bread in this store and all this sort of thing. So I did that. And then finally, we were thinking we might have to go home, because what I forgot to say was as we came over, our house sale fell through.
Oh, no.
And all our furniture was on the water. And it arrived, and it was waiting for us in Toronto. I don't know why it was Toronto, but it was. And it was there, the other side of the country. So we thought, well, this is just crazy. We had nowhere to put the furniture because we were still in this tiny little hovel. And then finally, on Christmas Eve, I heard that I had got a place in Camosun College, and also our house sale went through, and we heard on that Christmas Eve as well.
Oh, my gosh.
So it was quite remarkable. And then we bought a house out in Mathias, and by then I was working for Camosun College and enjoying it immensely. And my wife had got a job with the civil service, and she was working for an important person in the government, and she was working for the assistant to that person. And we had this big house. We had a 5-bedroom house, and we bought that because we had given an undertaking that we would be self-employed. And being very, very good people, not wishing to tread on anybody's toes or be thrown out of the country, we opened up a bed and breakfast as well as what we were doing.
Okay.
And we did that for just over a year and a half till we realized we did not have to do this. And we had some very weird experiences, which I won't go into, with why one should not go into bed and breakfast unless you're a bit of a toughie.
Just strange people staying at your bed and breakfast?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Really strange people. And the most unlikely people. One was 5 teachers who came to have a departmental meeting, except that we had a huge lounge, 27-foot lounge, and my wife had gone out that night to a meeting, and I thought, what are they doing? Because they were lying on the ground, and they'd got all the cushions out, and they had big bottles of very strong liquor. And, well, they got themselves absolutely pie-eyed. They ended up having pillow fights in the middle of the night. And we had another young couple staying, and they burst into them and apologized. Poor things. They were not pleased. And my neighbor said, what were they doing? What was happening at about 3 a.m? And I said, how do you mean? Because we had a big room downstairs. We hadn't hear it anymore. And apparently all these drunken women were in their night attire, were screaming and running up and down the road, because we had a private road. We were on Chapel Heights. We had the chapel in the garden.
They took the party outside.
Oh. Anyway, that was just one. I won't go into that too much.
Okay, so year and a half of having the bed and breakfast, you're done. You're done.
We're done.
Okay.
And then we had 2 acres with this house. And we were just on the edge of Mathias. Chapel Heights we had the chapel, as I say, which had become long misused before we bought the place. And we found that people from Colwood always felt sorry for the young people of Colwood. They had nowhere to go. So what did they do? They came to Mathias to celebrate. And I would suddenly find in the middle of summer that, there were 20 or 30 young people at the book, because I was high and part of my grounds were near the road going down. And they would have their parties there. So I'd ring the police, and the police would come and say, well, what do you expect us to do? I said, I want you to move them. They're underage, and they could set light to the place. Well, we can do that, but they'll come back. I thought, well, this is crazy. So we started looking at the islands, and we put in various offers on houses in different islands, only to find that we had the 48-hour clause dropped on us, which meant that you had to come up with the money and agree to buy or not on the house. And we weren't going to do that. We had a sale on our house. So that fell through again and again. And then we'd come to Pender twice and liked it. And my wife said, well, that's it. We can just fed up of this business. We take the house off the market and leave it at that. And suddenly we had these people who wanted to buy the place as a bed and breakfast.
Nice.
So we thought, oh, okay. And it was called Five Eagles Bed and Breakfast because on the day that we bought the house, our dog was asleep in the yard outside and 5 eagles were circling over it, thinking it was a corpse. So we called it Five Eagles. Now, what I didn't realize was the name Mathias is a very unusual name. My father, it's Mathias with one T, it's the Welsh one. And my father was the only dentist, well, the only name in the phone book of 10 million at the time, called Mathias. And so over here, I thought, well, nobody would be called Mathias. Loads of First Nations chiefs are called Mathias.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so what was happening was we'd get these phone calls. First Nations people, they'd say, so, how much you charge? And we'd say, what we charge? And they'd say, you're mad? And what they thought was that we were a fishing place. They could just come and dump themselves for a night at about 20 or 30 bucks, and that would be it. And they thought so because 5 eagles and Mathias.
Oh, okay, wow.
Yeah. So that was another reason we were thinking, well, this is time to move on.
Yeah.
Anyway, we finally found someone for the sale and came over here and saw this house and liked it, and that was it. So we settled.
All right. Well, actually, I just wanted to ask, what were you teaching at Camosun College?
English.
English, okay.
Yeah, a lifetime teacher of English. Yeah.
Okay.
I've always taught the older kids in Britain, so teaching adults was just wonderful.
What made it wonderful?
Well, because they all wanted to be there for a start. That was nice. You really are pampered in a college. Oh, it's lovely. We had a secretary and my own office, and oh, it's lovely.
So a lifetime of teaching English, do you mind touching on that for a little bit?
Well, I can do.
Yeah.
I've always combined with my teaching drama. We never had drama in the schools that I taught at. Never. But I would put on big plays and do a lot of improvisation stuff. And I always found that, especially with difficult classes, that if you did a bit of drama with them, it got it out of their system. And they felt that you were a human being and not someone who's going to beat them into submission.
What do you mean exactly? You're a bit of a human being and not going to beat them into submission?
Well, the difficult ones, those were the ones probably coming up 15, 16. They couldn't leave till they were 16. So they're 15. They want to leave. They've hated school the whole way through. Their parents hated school. They've inherited it. They're not very bright. They found it difficult. Most of what was going on was boring to them. And, they could be a nuisance. I was head of English, and we have a different system in Britain. I had a department in this big school. And a big school for us, and it was a big school, was 1,100. My granddaughter's going to a school in Vancouver, 5,000. Now that's what I call big school.
Huge, totally.
And so, yeah, I used to really enjoy my teaching. And because I was head of department and I had a number of people in the department who were perhaps new teachers, or in some cases just because they were female. You could not give them difficult classes because they got dominated. And so I would take those classes. And I used to feel, in some ways, I used to feel quite sorry for some of them. And we used to become quite friends. Some, never. Some were just horrible.
Are we talking about the students, you
Yes.
mean? Or? Okay.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And sometimes they had the names to go with it. I mean, they came from a family that really hated school. And the name was Skinner and Butcher, and names like this. And it seemed to go with, the fact you never found Butcher was doing really well in a class ever.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I know that sounds terribly generalistic, but there we are.
Okay. All right. But you used the arts, so doing some theater with people to help bring them more into appreciating being at school?
Yeah, we're just getting a bit more out of the time they're there. Because a lot of them just didn't do much. They were just bored.
Yeah.
And because they were bored, they had no real empathy with what was going on, especially with the teachers. I mean, I did teach at a school in Bristol where they were still beating. They still had canes. And the deputy head was about 6'3" and had a very long arm. And he really would lay about any boy that misbehaved. And they were terrified of him. I was terrified of him.
Sounds like a scary guy for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely.
But that's a different form of teaching altogether,
Yeah. So when you're teaching at Camosun, you're finding this to be a pretty great experience.
Oh, it was lovely. Yeah.
But you're
met some lovely students.
Yeah.
Because they're all, 18 upwards to 40 or something. And it was great.
But you're also finding it challenging where you're living, and then you and your wife are deciding it might be a good idea to move to the Gulf Islands.
Yes.
All right.
And so we came to the Gulf Islands. I was still teaching at Camosun, and it was the time when they had the radar vans. And so, of course, the ferries would do their usual. I'm getting late. I would be thinking, oh, my goodness, I'm going to be late for first lecture. And I beating down the highway like Billio, keep my eyes open for these vans, I never got caught, thank goodness.
Oh, you mean the police on the road with like a radar van? So
yes, they went through this series of it was round about, when would that have been? About 98.
Okay.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Because they're parked by the side of the road in a minivan?
Yeah. No, these are quite big vans.
Okay.
And quite modern, and you like this as you're driving.
So you're commuting. At this point, you guys moved to Pender Island. And you're commuting.
And after we'd done a couple of years of that, I took early retirement because the opportunity came. I knew Davy Ray. And he said that, well, what happened was they were building the new food store. And the old food store became the new pharmacy. And then when they moved out of there, Davy was going to use that and a little bit at the end and make 2 stores. And I said to him, I'll take all of it. We'll start a bookstore. And he said, wow, yes, I'd like that. Because everything else is so, well, what should we say, business. Insurance and banking, because we had a bank in those days, and food. But we didn't have anything like creative, as you might say, or an outlet for such things. And so my wife and I agreed to take this on. And at that time, we knew a guy called Alan Waddell. And he already had a small sort of pottery type thing outlet. But he didn't do it he didn't do it in a business-like way. He opened it when he felt like it and things like this. And so he said, well, I'll come in and I'll do the gallery side. So we said, oh, yeah, that's a good idea. So he came in with us and we started the bookstore.
Okay.
And I was incredibly lucky. There was this firm that you used to be able to buy books online, abooks.com. And the couple who founded that were already running a bookstore, a small one. And they got onto this idea and it took off. And they were selling expensive books online. And they realized that this was where the future was. So they put some students in their store thinking they'll run it down. And they didn't. They made a go of it. So they got rid of the students and got all the books into a garage. Secondhand, because it was a secondhand bookstore.
Okay.
And they just put the whole lot in there. And I was at Camosun, and a lady who served coffee that I always chatted with, she said, I've got something for you, because I'd said I might be retiring, but didn't know quite what to do with, the thing. I could do with getting hold of a few books, because I'm thinking of starting a bookstore. And she gave me this advert, which says, if you're interested, you have to buy the lot, but there's a load of books. So I went over to see it, and there it was, literally a garage full of second-hand books. So that's how I started the bookstore.
Oh, nice. Okay, right on. How many books did you walk away with that
Oh,
day?
hundreds.
Yeah.
Hundreds. Yeah.
Okay, so you got your first huge stock for
Yeah,
the store.
and I got, I'd seen online that a store had closed, a bookstore had closed in Vancouver. I went out there and I bought all their shelving. And that was wonderful. Already made, made to measure. And so that was great. And I was quite lucky in that sort of time. I used to find things like this turned up.
Had you run a business before this?
No.
Okay,
Never.
so first time. So you take early retirement and then you start
Now,
this bookstore.
when I say I hadn't run a business, that's not entirely true. While I was teaching, my wife found, and she was coming from having worked with the government, in Britain. This is in Britain to start with, and there she was quite qualified, but where we were, and I was in this big school where I'd become the head of department. In that town, she couldn't get any employment other than as a secretary to a lawyer, and it was literally at about 80 pence an hour, which was unbelievably, even in those days, that was very poor. So we opened up our own store in the garden. We had a big garden. And it just so happened that I found a business that was going out of business, and they made these little wooden huts. And they came and they installed the whole thing and did it all for me. It was great. And suddenly we had a business in the garden.
Awesome.
And we sold pottery and leather goods and all sorts of weaving things and paintings, and it was great. But that my wife ran it. I helped set it up, but she ran it. So we did have that background.
Okay. And when the bookstore opened on Pender, what year was that?
We opened it in February 2001.
So 2001. And how did the first couple of years of owning the bookstore go for you?
Well, as I say, Alan was with us. We sold quite a lot of pottery at that time. We opened up one wall to every week would have a different local artist. And it was free. They could put their paintings up, but if they sold anything, we got 40%. And that was quite good. And we opened up, as I say, in February, which probably wasn't the best time. It was hard. We got originally quite a lot of interest. And there were a lot of really good deals that we had among the books that we'd bought from abooks.com. Oh, and the other thing too at that time, I decided that I would also sell books on abooks.com. I did really well on that, and that really helped sort of keep the business going until I ran out of really good books. And then what happened with abooks.com was very sad, was the thrift stores decided that they would get in on this, but they didn't know anything about books. So a $60 book they would be selling for $5. Well, the whole thing fell out of the sky. That was the end of it. Once you start doing that, you can't cope.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we had a bit of a tough time, but we kept going. And after, I forget how many years, Alan moved on to the golf course, and he went to the shop, worked in the shop at the golf course. So we carried on by ourselves, and we finally got rid of it in 2007. And that was unbelievable. We were doing quite well, and we thought every year our books showed that we had progressed. And so we thought, well, perhaps we ought to put it up for sale. And we didn't quite know what we were going to do. We were thinking about it. And we'd both gone off to the Sunshine Coast to see a new potter and also some people in glass. We were looking more glass. And we got this phone call. Our accountant just rang us and said, "Are you thinking of selling?" And we said, "Why?" "Well, I have a couple who want to buy a business just like yours." And we sold it to David Book and his wife. And they bought the store, which was lovely. Very funny, his name being Book. And it went round, that there was this expert in books that was taking over.
That's so funny.
And another rumor that went round was that I was selling the business so that I could buy the garage. Now, that is hilarious, because a less likely person to be able to look at cars and know what's wrong with them would be me,
Yeah. Wonder how that one got started.
In fact, when we first opened up and I called it Talisman Books, it went round with the wags on the island that it was Taliban Books. Yeah, they thought that was terribly funny.
As well, too, so the little bit of Pender history there, of course, with the bookstore opening, which is fantastic. That's how it all began. But a couple things I want to touch on. One would be the Solstice Theatre and your involvement with that. But speaking of Pender history, I want to talk about car stops for a little bit, too, if you're okay talking about that.
Well, they're two quite separate things.
For sure. Let's go with the car stops first.
Okay. What happened was I saw an advert that was going to be a meeting of people who might like to help in getting paths around Pender. And originally it was called POP, Paths on Pender. After being, at the time, we all thought, well, we'll come up with different ideas, see what we could think about, to do with paths or whatever. And I said, no, I don't like POP, but it's childish. I would like to call it MAP, Moving Around Pender. So that was adopted. And then I looked up this business. Well, I saw what was needed on this island. The island needed some transportation. At the time, I don't think there was even a taxi. And there was no bus. And if you were elderly and couldn't drive, then you either had to leave the island or find someone to drive you around, which was difficult. And I thought, well, if we had something that, a sort of place where people could get a lift. And so I started investigating. And I was very lucky. I found a person who was doing a research into something very similar in America. And I started to realize that around the world there were these things whereby people did something similar to what I had in mind, but nothing quite like it. For instance, there was a place in America whereby they charged a toll to go over the bridge. And so people would, rather than take their car over the bridge, would leave their car, hitch a lift, and there was a place where everybody did. They stood there, and cars stopped, and pick them up and they take them over the bridge. And that was one thing that was happening. That was similar. And a lot of it involved computers. So, you'd get yourself on a computer and make sure that people would pick you up at a certain time and place. That wasn't what I had in mind. So I went to see the police next. And the sergeant at the time was very much in favour. And I said to him, I imagine that some people, because, as you know, hitchhiking is illegal in some places, I said, I imagine that people who give lifts worry about the people they're giving the lifts to. And I said, but on an island, they don't have to worry, because if anyone does anything stupid, they've got to get off the island. And the police agreed. It was interesting because after he left, and they didn't, as you know, they don't stay long on this island, the next sergeant, who said, and by then I had car stops fully working, that if she had been in charge, she'd never have allowed it, which I found interesting. But anyway, he was in favour. And then someone else told me of this firm that made signs. And then I rang up the Department of Transportation. And this guy was in charge of this area, but he was about to retire. He was a delightful guy, and he was quite happy using his car to go with me round the island and show me where it was safe to have car stops.
Oh, great.
And that I couldn't stick them wherever I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I had to stick them in these places. So I said, oh, fine. And I said, I'm thinking of having them red. He said, no, you're not. I said, And he explained why I couldn't have red and I couldn't have yellow. And he said, but green would be good. And I said, well, that's very environmental. Yeah, I like that. So that day with him, I agreed where the first lot would go. I applied for 40 and they said I could have 12 to see how it worked. And it was only on a trial basis. And I was able to get funding. That was quite nice as well. And then I went into town to this place that makes signs, and they were very happy to make the sign for me. As I say, I was belonging to MAP, and there was a guy in there, in MAP, who came up with the poem that you see, which is on every car stop. And so that was quite delightful as well. And then we put the first 12 in, and everyone was terribly enthusiastic. That was when MAP was at its height. We had a large number of very capable men who belonged, and women, but mainly men. And so, getting these car stops put in didn't take any trouble at all.
And so this is a volunteer organization?
Yeah, totally.
And, well, I'm just curious about the spark of inspiration for wanting to make this happen on the island. What was the big spark for you?
Well, the big spark was the challenge. We talked when we first set up, and when it was still POP, we first set it up, or was set up. I had nothing to do with the setup at all. And we just talked about things, and there was the idea that we should all try and think up an idea, something, individual that would be good. So I went away, and little by little, this sort of came about. As I say, there was this person doing research into something very similar. And she was quite happy to send me all the details that she had worked on. And I thought, well, that's really interesting. And I realized that it could work. It wasn't going to be a danger to anybody. There are two setbacks that we never, ever conquered. One of them is that when you get off the ferry, you can't have a car stop there. It's got to be at the very top. Well, by then, all the cars have gone.
Yeah.
So that was one. And the other was small children. We couldn't give lifts, or we couldn't encourage people to give lifts to women and children. because unless they happened to be family people who already had back seats for the kids. But unless you had safety seats for the kids, they couldn't give a lift. So that was immediately two lots of people who were ruled out. And a third that was ruled out were elderly people who might love to use the car stop, but if they did their shopping, then they had to walk with all their shopping to the car stop, which was quite close, but even so, and then they had to bundle it all into a car. It was hard work for them. And this was the same problem with the bus, of course, when we did a bus. Anyway, we got the first lot going. Then I got an expansion, and I expanded and kept on expanding until we're up to, I forget the latest figure now, but I think when the last ones I put in, how long ago would that have been? That must have been about 5 years ago.
Okay. So there's the demographic of people that were unable to use it when you're getting off the ferry, mothers with young children, the elderly. So who was using the car stops?
Well, when we first had this problem, take the ferry, we decided that, and because we discussed this as a group, once it was going, we would discuss these problems and see how we could improve on it. And we had these cards which said, are you willing to give a lift? If so, please put this in your windscreen. And then we encouraged people on the ferry, would put up signs around the ferry saying, if you want a lift, go down early and check which cars have got this card on the windscreen. And it worked quite well for about a month or two. And then after that, everybody lost their cards and, We tried to expand on the car stop in the sense that we put in plastic, we fix to the car stop itself, a plastic container which had a map showing Pender and all the car stops around Pender. Well, you'd think that would be a useful thing. But sadly, there are people who always have to ruin everything. They're the same people who put their used trash into the bins that are just for the dog poo. They're the same people. And what happened was, for some reason, people would take out the maps, squash them all up, and push them back on top so you couldn't get any out.
What? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't happen much, but it happened. We've had very little vandalism, except for the one down by the Slow Coast Cafe area there. That one on the other side of the road disappeared. We had a look around and found it in the woods just behind. So some person bored, I suppose, visitor to the island probably, thought what fun to pick this out of the ground and stuff it in there. So we put that back up, but
the car stop is such an interesting thing. I told you when I was talking to you around Christmas time that I did an experiment where I spent the whole day going from car stop to car stop on a Sunday, and I spent about 6 hours. And,
wow.
Yeah, and I was interviewing people as I went. And
good.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the sound quality was terrible inside of people's cars, so I won't be able to use that going forward. But thank you to the people who picked me up and did brief interviews with me. But it was an interesting experience to spend the day waiting at a car stop, and what I really came away with that from was it was a vulnerable experience to be standing there patiently waiting and having car after car pass you.
Yeah. Really, I ought to have put in something about the fact that it's best if you stand and put your thumb out, and a lot of people don't feel that they should do that. And I always do.
Yeah. What's interesting though, is that whenever I see somebody at a car stop, it's pretty clear if they're standing and they're looking in your direction and you're making eye contact with that person at the car stop. If their thumb's not out, I know exactly why they're there. They're there for a ride, right? They're not standing at a car stop and looking in your direction by coincidence, right? No. But fair enough, the thumb out, because I've spent a ton of time hitchhiking in New Zealand, and when you put your thumb out, it does sort of give the person driving by a little bit maybe of extra
Well,
motivation
it wakes
to
them
stop.
up. Because
Yeah.
some people just don't even notice. They're just driving away and along. Unless you actually do something like this, I think, oh,
Right,
and they
right.
stop.
Pick me up for crying out
That's
loud.
right. Yeah.
Did you see that the car stops were being used quite frequently? Did you use the car stop?
Oh, yes, I use the car stop. And there are certain car stops that are really well used.
Yeah.
The best used one is by the ballpark, going downtown, as I call it. And the one, well, the two. One opposite the pharmacy, and that will take you further along the road. And if you want to go back, there's one just as round the corner as you come out of the driftwood.
Mm-hmm.
It's on the right there. And that is very well used. And I found, for instance, whenever I took the car into the garage, I'd put it in the garage, get a car stop back home, came to collect the car, get a car stop down, and pick the car up. You know, it's very, very useful.
What experiences did you have in general, let's say, using the car stops with people?
Well, always friendly. And some really wanted to talk. It was lovely. Others just were quite happy for you to talk or not. There are some places I did notice it was more difficult to get a lift than others, and I don't know why that is.
Okay. Do you know which places those are?
Yes, the one on South Pender. There aren't that many car stops in South Pender, and I used that one once, and it took me a little while. But normally, it was about, I always got a lift by the third vehicle.
Wow. Okay.
Now, reasons you didn't get lifts. Elderly ladies by themselves would not normally give lifts unless they knew you.
Sure.
People with big dogs in the car will not give you a lift because they think you'd be scared stiff. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I always found car stops really fun in terms of picking people up, and I haven't used them that often, but I've definitely used them. But I'm always surprised at how enjoyable of an experience it is when I pick somebody up. Because sometimes there'll be this sense of hesitation where, oh, I don't know if I really want to pick somebody up, but oh well, let's see. And then it actually turns out to be really good because I find that that interaction in the car is quite intimate.
I only regretted it once.
But generally the experiences were pretty good.
Very good. A lot of young people use it. If I had to say the most people are young students, under 30s. You don't get very many people, middle-aged people, using car stops because they've all got cars. They just don't see any need for car stops.
Right.
And the very elderly don't use car stops. They don't feel comfortable standing by a car stop.
You know, something else that's changed too in recent years is that a lot of people have pedal assist bikes or battery powered bikes.
Yes.
And more people who might have used a car stop in the past are using that for their main mode of transportation.
Yep.
So that gets them around, which is great, which is fantastic.
Oh, it is, yeah.
But the car stops are such a great idea, and it's such a lovely thing to have on the island.
Well, the beauty of it is, once they're in, unless they're vandalized, they're fine.
Yeah.
I would put out an appeal every May for people to clear up the car stop near them. Just cut the grass. And then often Dave Hargreaves, who was a great supporter, and myself, we would go around together and tackle any one that we saw with our weed eaters and things, and just do that once a year. There is one, I'm bad on the names of roads, but on your way to the ferry, when you pass the recycling, and there's those ponies and things along that road there was a car stop, and a big truck had obviously backed into it, and it was bent, literally bent. And that was the solid part, bent like that, which was unusual. But by and large, they don't need maintenance, you know, and this is the beauty of it. They don't cost anything once they're in, and they're there for the use of people if they need them.
Yeah. And it's pretty obvious what it is, and the poem, which I don't know, maybe I'll read at the end of the episode when I do the end credits, fully explains what's going on there. But thank you for being so involved in doing that for the island. It's a really great thing.
It was fun. It was fun.
Yeah,
and a lot of good people involved, helping to put the things in and keeping them under their control and so on.
Solstice Theatre, Barry. You want to talk about the Solstice Theatre? Oh my gosh.
I've always been keen on theatre. And I'd no sooner arrived than I heard that they were going to put a play on. So I turned up. And this was the one done by Bronwyn Merle. She was the director at the time. And they put on an outside production of Twelfth Night. I couldn't believe my luck when she cast me as Malvolio. And that was the highlight of my life.
Really?
Oh, yes. What happened was, it was an outside production. We did it in South Pender. You go over the bridge and down that straight road, and then just when it turns in the valley, we turn to the left, not the right. And down there, and I forget the exact place, was this guy who offered his grounds. He had a house on the top of the hill. His grounds sloped right the way down, and at the bottom was a very small road. It was a cul-de-sac that went down, and you could reach it by going past his house about 100 yards, and then you could come back. So we were able to use that to put up the set there. And what we had was seats for the very elderly. Everybody else just sat on the hillside on their rugs. And so there was never any chance of us running out of space. So we had a very big audience, really big. It was wonderful. And, we had such fun. I mean, Brent Marsden playing Sir Toby Belch, and Tim Kemp and his wife were both in that, and he was hilarious. Oh, what a funny man he is. And we had all sorts of characters who I don't remember seeing those people again in plays. Some of them, some were, but some never saw them again, and they were just so good. We had someone who did the costume, and it was brilliant costume. Oh, my goodness. I remember first night, it went beautifully. But I had to have a dresser, because I had to have cross garters. And it was really quite a palaver putting these yellow stockings on, and because that was halfway through the play, and then putting crisscrossing all the way. Anyway, I was so enjoying myself. And I came off stage and I thought, okay. I said to my dresser, I think it's time to, get things going. She said, bit early, isn't it? I said, no. So she put them on, and she's very good and helped me get these things all cross-gartered. And I walked out ready to go on stage and realized I was a scene ahead of myself. I wasn't due on. Well, I was due on, but not in those cross garters.
Uh-oh.
So I came rushing up to, quick, get them off. And they were pinned. I mean, everything had to be got off. And as my line came up, I was still putting my tights up when I got on stage. And I still remember I was saying, "'Tis but fortune, all is fortune." It was so appropriate. The audience just fell all over the place because they could tell I was still pulling my tights up.
It was the highlight of your life to do this
play. I've been involved in lots of plays, but this was the one I enjoyed the most. Oh, it was wonderful.
I think I may have seen a poster for this recently at the Driftwood. It seems the Solstice Theatre has some old posters that are listed. Yeah. But tell me more about this play, because this sounds amazing.
Well, it was. It was a vast audience. It seemed a huge audience. And a very, very responsive audience. And I had people coming up afterwards, days afterwards, saying how much they'd enjoyed it. and never happened before, and how much they enjoyed the character and so on. And I felt the character was just wonderful. And I could do all the sort of stupid things that I love doing as this character. So it just loaned itself to it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
really
and the
awesome.
fact that it was an outdoor play, a Shakespeare outdoor play.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever put a Shakespeare on since, as far as I know. I think it was the only time.
Was that your first play with Solstice Theatre?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then I directed Under Milkwood. Now, I don't know if you know, but Under Milkwood, written by Dylan Thomas, was actually written for radio. So, as a director, you can do whatever you want, which is wonderful. Oh, I had great times directing this play because the language is so wonderful. I remember losing my cool completely with this guy. He started the play off, and the light was on him, totally dark, and he has to say, "To begin at the beginning." And then he goes through setting the scene. On first night, totally unrehearsed, he goes, "To begin," and pulls out a watch. At the beginning. Well, I went absolutely berserk. This was not what I wanted. This was not the atmosphere that was being created. So he and I had a real bust up. Oh no, it was dress rehearsal. That's right. He did it at dress rehearsal. Yes.
Yeah, so you've directed a number of plays for the Solstice?
Yes. After that, I directed Our Town by Thornton Wilder, which was lovely. It has two families on different parts of the stage. And interestingly enough, on the left-hand side of the stage, looking at the stage, that is, that's stage right, but looking at the stage, was a doctor's family, and I had our doctor playing that character.
Oh, right on.
Which was lovely. That worked nicely. And it's really very moving play because the young man of this side falls in love with the daughter of this side, and she dies. And then you have a scene right towards the end with chairs which signify the dead. And the more recent dead are in the front. And those that have been around for a while are further back. And this girl sits down and she's just told, just calm yourself, just relax, just let it all happen. And it was very, very moving. That worked beautifully. Mm.
Nice. You know, I was just thinking while you were talking there, because I've acted in a couple plays and I love going to watch plays and find it really enjoyable. But for you, what is it about being involved in plays, acting and directing that you really appreciate?
It's very hard to say, really. Just enjoyment. Trying to bring out what the playwright wanted. Looking at, take Shakespeare, it never dates. The concerns, the jokes, the whatever, they remain the same. I have been to, in the last 12 months, I suppose, I have been to 2 other 12th nights, one of which was horrific. And it was done by Bard on the Beach. And when I went in, it wasn't any set that I recognized. It was set out like a fun fair. And in it, some of the speeches were put to music. Some speeches were cut, which is, you can do that. What you can't do is add to Shakespeare.
Mm.
You could, I mean, I put on Macbeth one time in the school I was at, and I had, in the whole of Hawkham, which is the witches' place, I had a dance drama. Now, they didn't say anything, but I had a joke going on right the way through Macbeth, which was black velvet and black light. And so the witches, I had them with the most ghastly masks, and they would come on and start the play, and the audience would have total darkness, and then suddenly there are these 3 horrible-looking masks looking at them. And by turning around, they're back in darkness again. And so what happened was, whenever Macbeth or anybody like Banquo was on stage, then these were old crones in their black velvet with these masks, horrible masks. But as soon as there was nobody on stage, they opened up and they were wearing white dresses, white for purity. Totally different. Because I thought, why is it that witches are always old crones? Why couldn't they be young and beautiful?
Good thinking.
And these were the girls that I could find in, because we had girls up to the age of 19 almost. And so I had 3 witches who were really good looking. And they all had dark hair, long. And then I had this dance drama with the main witch had red hair, long red hair. And they all came out with these robes and then opened them up. And the dance drama was in the white, in the purity. But I didn't add any words. And this is what they did in Bard on the Beach. I couldn't believe it. My wife said to me, look, stop, because I was in such a state over it. And she said, well, imagine that you didn't know any Shakespeare at all. This is great entertainment. Oh, I suppose it was.
It's just hard to get over the sacrilege of them adding to Shakespeare.
And I went to another 12th night, and this was at the university in Victoria, which is very good. I have to say, if you want some good plays, go to them. I've been to a number, and the standard is brilliant. And this one, what they'd done, they'd got over the whole business of costume. And what they'd done was place it on the west coast of Canada in a place that was near the sea. And you started off with this huge amount of crashing of waves and lightning flashing and everything. And on they come. And it was placed in the future. So you had concerns about global warming and all that sort of thing, but nothing added. It was just the atmosphere. It was all to do with the atmosphere that they created. And they kept perfectly to the words. But they'd brought it up to date in such a way that I thought was just brilliant.
It's amazing to bring it up to date without changing any words. That does sound incredible, quite honestly. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
No, they spoke in the way that they did, Shakespeare's time, because this was a little kingdom on the west coast of Canada.
Interesting. Right on. How many plays do you think you were involved with the Solstice Theatre, whether it be acting or directing?
Well, I did a number that I directed. I did a number that I co-directed because at one time we were very short of directors. And so people would agree to be directors, providing they weren't totally in charge. And then as they got more and more excited and involved, I stepped back a bit, which was good. Worked well.
Yeah, because it's a lot of work directing a play.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
What do people not know about what it takes to direct a community theater play? Because like anything in life, I think that we underestimate the amount of time and effort involved in creating things.
Well, that's true.
And so is there an insight you can give to people about what they might not be aware of as to the effort and time commitment for directing a play?
Well, no, not really. You either want to do it or you don't. I mean, it's very much like, people who want to climb a difficult mountain. It's either in your blood to want to do it or not,
So the passion pulls you forward. Let's just quickly talk about no longer living on the island. You've moved off the island. So you've moved off the island now.
Yes, the time had come, sadly. At the time, I didn't have a doctor. I'd had a knee replacement, which the actual operation was good. But what I didn't know was a previous interaction I'd had with a surgeon who was an idiot, who had punctured my colon. And what was supposed to have been a 20-minute sort of exploration, colonoscopy, turned out to me being in hospital for 6.5 days and taking about 6 months to recover. And what I hadn't realized was I'd lost an awful lot of blood. So when I had my knee replacement, it took me a while to recover because they didn't seem to notice this. I was terribly anemic, which was a nuisance. But now I'm back to normal, thank goodness. But at the time, it was hard. And our old dog died, and we were very fond of our dog. And then my wife was finding it difficult because I was not, 100%. And she found the house a bit big and, wood-burning stoves and stuff like this. So we thought, well, maybe it is time for us to move on. And when we moved very quickly. And luckily, we found this place in 5th Street they hadn't finished it. We signed for the particular apartment we have, sight unseen, because at that time they still were wearing metal hats and we didn't have one. And we've ended up with a very pleasant apartment on the 3rd floor of a 3-story block. It's a very modern block. It's very well looked after. And rather than take on another house or anything like that, because we got a doctor, that was amazing. Pure luck, again, but we got a doctor. And he's turned out to be quite marvellous. And so things worked quite well. The pharmacist is absolutely brilliant, the one we deal with, family business, and he's very good. And those sort of things were very helpful when we first moved in. And we found Sidney very amenable. I mean, you can walk anywhere. It's flat.
Mm-hmm.
And so we hardly use the car. And in fact, I get warned by my mechanic that really the battery is wearing down because I don't use it enough. And I get a rebate from my insurance and things like this. Not using enough miles.
Nice.
No, it was very difficult to move. But now we've moved, we're fine. And I teach at the local old folks centre, and I take a writing course there, and my prize student is 93 and really, sharp as a whit. And that's fun. And because we've moved off island, we now can go to the theatre, which we never could unless we were prepared to take a hotel as well. And we go to the pictures, the cinema, British terms. And, we go to concerts and things we didn't used to do. And there's all sorts of interesting places to walk. There's a place called Dean Park, which is something like 140 acres that have never been chopped. So you've got first growth there. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant place. If you want your bath of trees, that's the place to go.
Yeah, is that the very steep park in...
It's quite steep.
Yeah, it's very steep, definitely, just outside of Sidney there, I guess.
Yeah, it's about 10 minutes, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, go past the swimming centre.
Right, yeah.
And then take the first turning out after that.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like there's good things that you've discovered
Yes.
living off of Pender Island. But
I mean, what I do miss about Pender, and I do miss it, I missed the space of the house. I loved the house. I loved the garden. It wasn't a very good garden, but I loved it. And at the bottom of the garden, we had the disc golf park. So that was lovely too. It walked the dog straight through the gate and there we were. And I miss all of that. I particularly miss all the associations, the clubs and groups and stuff. Because when I left, I was a part of the commission and Solstice and, OMAP. And it was really something. And then there's Slow Coast Cafe, which is an institution in itself, where I've been this morning.
Well, thanks for your contribution to Pender and making some interesting things happen on the island.
It's been great pleasure.
Yeah. Any last words to end off with?
I did write a long poem called Beware Concrete. And it talks about the whole business of the very rich coming to Pender and changing their property, not contributing to the society very much at all, and taking what they want, but giving very little. And that's a big danger. And I think places, for instance, if you go to Maine, I don't notice the change quite so much. And I go to Maine quite a bit. And I go to Turner. And those islands don't seem to be quite so affected as Pender's been. Galiana's affected even more. It's, the nearest to Vancouver.
Yeah. Beware concrete.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good thing for us to be aware of for sure, because I hear you, things are changing here. And maybe too quickly.
Well, I'm reasonably elderly. And so one always says, it wasn't the same when I was young.
Yeah. Everybody says that.
I know. Got to stop that.
All right. Well, thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much to Barry for doing that interview. And thank you for sticking around to the end. As we mentioned in the interview, we were talking about what the sign on the car stop says. So here we go. Drivers don't have to take the first in line. You're not obliged to accept a ride. That's fine. You accept a ride at your own risk, but the ride is free. So consider it a gift. And that is the little poem that is on every car stop sign on Pender Island. The car stops. I've been picking more and more people up at car stops recently, and it's been pretty great for me. You can decide if that's something that you would like to do, but for me, I have pretty good conversations and interactions with people during those moments, so it's a good one. I'd like to thank Ben McConkey for providing the theme music to this podcast, and I'd like to also mention again that if you're at all interested in recording your life stories with me and recording an audio memoir, you can reach out to me at myaudiomemoir.com, or you can find a link in the show notes. And I'd be very happy to talk to you more about it. So thank you once again for listening, and until next time.